Today on Screen It or Stream It, we're going to do something completely different!
And yet somehow exactly the same.
Fine.
We want to talk to you about Star Trek, or Star Treks, or maybe kind of two Star Treks.
There's new sci-fi shows available right now, both streaming, right, on their various platforms.
One of which happens to be on actual television and stream.
Yeah, the other one is being streamed from an actual television network, oddly enough, and they have their own broadcast and CBS, but they're not broadcasting it. They're just streaming only.
So we want to talk about Star Trek. How long has it been since there's been a Star Trek? When was the last one?
Enterprise was the last one. I should have looked up the dates. It started in the early 2000s, I believe.
Okay, so you're looking at, 10, 15 years since we've had a Star Trek?
Yes, not counting the reboot movies, which started in 2009.
Nah, series.
Okay, yeah, series, we haven't had one since Enterprise, which that one had kind of mixed feelings all around.
Well, and so this year we got two Star Treks. One of them happens to be named Star Trek, one of them is not named Star Trek.
Right.
But we really got two Star Treks, and the one that's not named Star Trek is more Star Trek than the other one, as far as I'm concerned.
You know, I can actually see your argument there very easily. We're talking about the Orville, which is on Fox. Fox. Seth MacFarlane. Best we can tell, he wanted to do Star Trek, and either someone told him, no, you can't do Star Trek, so he said, fine, I'll make my own Star Trek.
Yeah, that's how it goes in my imagination, is Seth going, hey, you're making a new Star Trek, cool, can I be on it? And someone going, Seth MacFarlane, no, you can't be on Star Trek, and him just going, well, fine then, I'll make my own.
And the funny thing is, it's the most blatant copy, and I hate to use that word because it's not.
It's an homage and it's a ripoff.
Yes,
and I don't know where it falls in the.
But they're not even trying to hide it. Like, they're very obviously like, okay, we like everything about this. We're going to make our own. That's not related, but it really is. But it's not. And it works really, really well.
So, just in full disclosure, I saw all of the original series Star Trek. Mm-hmm. I saw probably 95% of Next Generation.
Great show.
And that's pretty much it for me and Star Trek. In the movies. All the movies.
I'm a very much Trekkie guy. I'm not wearing my Star Trek hat, but I was earlier before I came in here. I have pretty much seen every Star Trek there is, short of the animated series, and I'm watching the new series, of course, which we're going to talk about here too. But the Orville, it is the Star Trek I did not know I wanted.
It's the Star Trek I knew I wanted. That's
how I feel like, because it reminds me so much of the original the best parts of the original series, that they're just exploring, it's new stuff every week, and they're actually, surprisingly, in a very smart way, dealing with current social issues, which is what Star Trek has always done when they're at their best.
Well, and there's so many little things that make it Star Trek, even though it's the Orville and not really Star Trek branded. I mean, the uniforms are color-coded, and they look like Star Trek uniforms.
Kinda, yeah.
The music reminds me of Star Trek. The missions they go on, the way they proceed about things. The only thing really that is off-putting, I guess, from the whole Star Trek theme is it is written by Seth MacFarlane, and so you get that, he wants to throw some comedy in there. And seeing the previews, I thought it was going to be super heavy, and it's not.
I thought the thing was going to be a spoof, goofball space show, kind of Galaxy Quest on steroids as far as the comedy, but it's not. It's very, the universe they built is taken very seriously. The characters, though, say some just crazy off-the-wall stuff sometimes.
It's original Star Trek. It's like Kirk and Spock and original series Star Trek with 4 or 5 random... They think this is funny things they throw in there. Sometimes it is funny, and sometimes it's just stupid and kind of shouldn't have been there.
But I've never found it off-putting enough that it just that shouldn't have been there. I'm just he's a doofus. So
when I watched the pilot of the first episode, I hated it.
Yeah.
But I was expecting, like you said, Galaxy Quest or Spaceballs or something, and I was like, man, that just really wasn't that funny. And we went on and watched the second one for some reason. And I was like, I kind of liked it, but it just really isn't funny. And by the third one, it clicked. This isn't supposed to be wall-to-wall laughs.
Right.
It's a Star Trek. It's a sci-fi. He just throws a couple of comedic elements in there. And like I said, sometimes they're funny and they work.
Sometimes they're really funny. But, again, it's never walls-to-walls comedy. It's just that moment here and there that they sprinkle in to just lighten the tension.
But at the same time, they have some very deep and thought-provoking. They have societal norms, and what are we going to do in this situation, and how do we save these people, and how do we rescue, and how do we survive, and it's, to me, that's very, very Star Trek.
One thing that is really interesting there's two major deviations that make it not Star Trek. One, they don't have transporters for whatever reason so they have to take a shuttle everywhere they go if they want to land on a planet, which is fine.
And it's a blatant ripoff of the Star Trek shuttle.
And they don't have the Prime Directive, which some Trek fans love, some Trek fans hate. Basically, that's we don't interfere with other cultures. On the Orville, it's not really a rule, but they seem to try not to get in people's way. Like, as a general guideline, they don't want to mess. They're not trying to make enemies. They're trying to just explore and make friends. So
they don't have the Prime Directive hanging over the head of not influencing.
Right. It's not the number one. You must die before you interfere. But at the same time, they try to.
But they're not out there, trying to pick fights
and
conquer. And
they're not messing with people.
They're doing the Star Trek thing. They're exploring and they're making friends and going boldly where no one's gone before.
Yeah.
Which should then take us to the new Star Trek. Which is actually labeled Star Trek.
Yes, and it's very different.
Star Trek
Discovery. Mm-hmm. It is most closely related to the reboot movie franchise with Chris Pine and all those guys. Which, that one, they really capitalize in the movies on the action, the adventure aspect of it. They don't really do the exploring as much. They did a little in that last one, but mostly it's their kind of.
Well, and see, I
gotta have a shoot 'em up.
I really feel like the Orville is more Star Trek than Star Trek.
Right, the new one.
That's part of the tone is wrong.
It's a very dark show. For the darkest Star Trek before this was Deep Space Nine, where they were boldly sitting where no man had sat before. But it worked. It worked once you get into it. It was off-putting at first, but once you get into it, it's fun.
So, being my resident Star Trek expert, seeing as you've seen all of them and I haven't.
I can always clear those Jeopardy categories when it comes up. I clear it on Star Trek every time.
So, when I watch it, it's very dark. It's very grim.
Yes.
It's very full of violence and bloody and let's kill all the things we can kill. And all of those things, like Star Trek is bright colors. To me, and
yes.
you can tell me if I'm wrong here, because like I said, I've only seen the original series and Next Gen. But Star Trek is bright colors. It's let's make friends. Let's avoid fighting at all costs. Mm-hmm. And this is dark. It's grim. It's there's an enemy. Let's shoot him in the face. How can we blow him up? And to me, it just doesn't feel like Star Trek.
It's definitely different. And the first two that you watched were very much Gene Roddenberry's babies, I guess, for lack of a better word. Though he had a lot of studio interference in the original run of the original show, it ended up being a lot more kind of swashbuckly than he wanted. Next Generation, they gave him the keys to the studio and said, do your thing, which they were nervous to do, but he did his thing. And that is really his vision of what Star Trek should have been. And it was very diplomatic. They pretty much only fired in self-defense, which more or less they kind of still do in the new one. But as you said, very dark brooding. They're a lot more trigger-happy. No, you're absolutely right.
Now, in the new one, you've got, you got a rogue captain who seems to be, he's more than happy to punch somebody and shoot somebody and blow stuff up. And
unlike any other Star Trek show, they've all been focused on the captain, and the first show is the captain, the doctor, and Spock. Mm-hmm. Every show after that, it's been kind of, they've had their main 7 crew members that they kind of follow around. But this one, it seems like they have focused pretty much on one character who is not the captain, is not the first officer, is not anybody really. They're just on the ship. But they made it work. I don't want to say too much about that to give spoilers away, but they made it work. And I was surprised. I'm like, how can you do that without the captain's where the action is, right?
Well, so there's something else that kind of strikes me as weird. So, Kirk is charismatic. To go back to the original, Kirk is charismatic,
and he punched a few people in the face, as I recall.
But you like Kirk.
Yeah, he's fun.
He's kind of a man's man. He's that old school.
He extends his hand in friendship, and then if you mess with him, he'll punch you out. He's Horatio Hornblower in space.
And then you've got Bones, Dr. McCoy,
good old Southern doctor.
And he's kind of the humanity. He's the
emotion. Yes.
Yeah, and
the passion.
You kind of you feel for him. he's kind of us.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of get to experience Star Trek through him. And then, like you said, you've got Spock, and Spock is
the cold intellect,
right? But you understand, he's not. He's supposed to be emotionless, but he's not. Mm-hmm. It's not that he doesn't care,
right?
Like, he takes into account that, it's just that he doesn't have that, knee-jerk reaction emotion. When you go to the Orville,
mm-hmm.
there are some characters I like mm-hmm. and I care about. There's some I don't. Actually, Seth MacFarlane's captain is kind of, take him or leave him. But I love, I can't even think of his name. Darn it.
The big guy with
he's one of the aliens, so he's got an alien name.
He's got kind of a brown complexion, a big head.
The security officer.
The not Klingon.
Yeah. The security officer.
Oh, the girl?
Yeah.
Again, I forget her name, but
there's several of the characters that are really good and I really like. When you go to it feels very old school to me.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to Star Trek Discovery, all of a sudden, like, the captain's a jerk.
Well, it's more than that, though. He's genuinely scary.
Oh, yeah.
He is doing things behind the scenes. That's the sense I get that is not okay, would not be okay with anybody if they knew about it. But I think it's that he keeps it all kind of, like, he's got all these games moving. He's like the chess master, keeping things going, and nobody knows the full of what's going on. That's kind of the sense I get.
And Michael...
But there's devious plotting, and yes. I expect backstabbing at some point, just the tone they've set.
And Michael is the main character.
Yeah.
And she's broken. Like,
very broken.
She has problems. The roommate is annoying.
I love her. She's funny.
The doctor...
She is annoying a bit.
The doctor is egotistical, and he's not the doctor.
The engineer guy.
The engineer.
He's not the ship engineer. He's a
scientist.
A scientist engineer. Yeah.
But he's egotistical, and like they tried to make all of the characters flawed, which I think is supposed to give them humanity. But just makes me like, I don't like you. I don't like you.
And that is probably the biggest area that it is different from Gene Roddenberry's vision of the future, because his idea was that in the future, because humanity as a species will grow into our adulthood, into maturity, so we will eliminate things like disease, poverty, war, interpersonal conflict.
That's the prime directive. That's why we don't fight. That's
because we have grown. But in this version, it's more that they're taking all of our flaws from today, putting it in that setting, which can really give rise to good drama, but I understand why it's off-putting, because it's not the Star Trek we were given and has been since day one. It's very different. It's a very different view of it.
And it kind of goes back, we say there's a bunch on a lot of things, like why does it need the name? I know why it needs the name, because people are drawn to the name. But a lot of movies get made, or a lot of shows get made, and they give it a famous name, and you're like, it has nothing to do with it. Like, I just feel like the Orville should be like Star Trek Orville.
Very nearly, yes.
And I feel
very
like
nearly.
Star Trek Discovery should have been Space Wars, or, it needed its own thing. It didn't need to be Star Trek, because it just doesn't feel like Star Trek. And if it had been a sequel, and supposed to be many, many years in the future, be alright, so, you get the kind of Mad Max thing going. Society is degraded.
That's the thing. The time it's set in is supposed to be 10 years before Kirk, which is very close to that same time period, so you would expect everything to look and feel the same. It doesn't at all.
And it's so vastly different.
Very vastly.
And
I hate the ship design. I'm just going to throw that out there right now. I hated it when I first saw it. I hated it from every preview, and I still hate it. It's awful. It makes no sense to me. Give me a tech reason why it looks like it does, and I'll go with it. But they've given me nothing. Like, look, it's got circles.
It looks like a pizza cutter.
Oh, it does! That's bad.
But there's so many things about it. Like, it's not a bad sci-fi. It's got some, like, horror elements to it.
That's the only reason I can think of they may not be airing it. Instead, they're streaming, because they're a broadcast station, so they have to deal with FCC rules, and there's only so much things they can show and can't show. There's been quite a surprising amount of blood. Like, in one episode that they had that accident on that one ship, and then they beamed over, and, like, people were turned inside out. They were all jelly. It was gross looking, but it was awesome.
But that also kind of goes against the feeling of Star Trek.
Right.
So, Star Trek Discovery is only available on the CBS app,
which made me mad.
You have to stream it, and they make you pay for it.
They do. $6 a month, and you have to watch commercials for that.
And there's nothing else. I mean, it's CBS. You get everything else that's on there. I'm pretty sure is on CBS. You can just watch it for free as opposed to paying. It's like you're paying $6 a month to watch
one
Star
show.
Trek.
But in very slight, I'm not even gonna. No, you get 4 episodes for that $6 a month, so it's really not that expensive. But still, that's only one show you're essentially renting for.
But it just feels dirty. It feels wrong to be forced to do that.
Oh, I agree. As soon as the show's over, I'm canceling my subscription.
Well, and the Orville is on Fox. It's free to watch. It's available on different streaming. We usually watch it streaming on
and
something.
And isn't that how it's supposed to work?
Oh,
I worked in advertising for 10 years. You put ads on it and then give it to people free. You don't make them pay for it and then make them watch ads. Shame on you, CBS.
But I don't like that. But I kind of got the feeling that's okay. Maybe they want to do Star Trek and they want to put it on the website instead of available because they can do whatever they want to. You can go full HBO if you want because we're no longer bound.
Could.
But it doesn't fit. Like, it doesn't feel like Star Trek. There's violence. We like violence. But it doesn't feel like Star Trek. And the F-bombs.
Oh, that was very off-putting. Okay, here's the thing.
I have nothing against profanity.
No, he has nothing against profanity.
But the fact they just put it in there, it was completely useless. It was not appropriate, and they just did it because they could, and that was stupid.
It's Star Trek. It's supposed to be set 2/300 years in the future, 23rd century, whenever that is exactly. They shouldn't have the same vernacular, big word point, that we use today. They shouldn't talk like that because it's the future. Anyway, end of spill. I do have one thing I do want to say real quick. We're getting short on time.
Besides vernacular, that's a derby.
Oh, Three Stooges. Love it. Anyway, the one thing they are doing right, or one of the things, the show's very pretty. The spectacle, outstanding. Had to say that. The other thing they are doing right is after the first couple of episodes, which I was worried, they have finally started dealing with moral issues more, which is what, again, that's what Star Trek has always done at their best. They deal with relevant current events, moral issues. That's what they wrestle with. And they have finally started doing that about 3-4 episodes in, so I'm very excited about that.
Well, I would say you can get the Orville for free. You can get your Star Trek fix. If you're a fan of Star Trek, just overlook the stupid comments they make that are supposed to be funny, and you can get your Star Trek fix. I don't think it's worth, like, if Star Trek Discovery was free, it'd be fine. I'd say go watch it. It's sci-fi. You'd enjoy it. I don't think it's worth. I wasn't going to. Glad you did. I go over his house and watch it.
On the bright side, you can get it free for a week, so you can get caught up on however many episodes you missed, and then decide for yourself if you want to pay $6 a month for it. Yeah. I decided it was worth it for me, and my wife wanted to watch it too. So hey, I got a point for that. So
that's a good option.
All right. Any final thoughts?
That's it.
And that's it for our time this week. Thank you so much for watching Screen Under Streaming.
And remember, don't take your kids to the movies on Tuesday nights because that's when we go.